Which players for the Dallas Cowboys need to have much better performances this time around against the Eagles? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, we've got some Twitter questions that we're going to get to, including which players need to step up in this matchup. Should Stephon Gilmore follow A.J. Brown in maybe a 2023 draft redo? But before we do that, we at least need to mention Mike McCarthy. Undergoing emergency surgery, gonna miss probably all week of practice. How big of an impact does this have on the Cowboys?
Well, as a fellow big Irish guy, I'm going to tell you right now that he's not going to miss this game. I think it has an effect in the fact that the guy that's the head honcho, the jefe, the guy that makes the schedule and kind of enforces it is not going to be at practice. But I do think that, this is a team that has several very experienced coaches. Obviously one who's been a Super Bowl head coach before that can obviously facilitate practice. Look, I mean, I think that the structure of these practices are such that, these players know how to maneuver, get in and out of these drills. They know how the timing of everything. They don't need McCarthy to facilitate, them moving from station to station or working on what drill to drill. I think that, for the most part, McCarthy can give the plan and this team can execute it and get through a good week, good few days of practice if needed without McCarthy.
The only thing I worry about is McCarthy is the play caller and he has a big hand in the offensive game plan. So how much does that impact if he's not going to be there for at least the next couple of days? We'll see. I mean, this is where having a veteran quarterback, having a veteran offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer does help. But just another thing the Cowboys have to navigate this week. All right, Leila, let's get to some Twitter questions. Again, before we do that, just a quick shout out to our friend Yuchi, who asked a question on yesterday's show. We answered it, and I forgot to mention her name. I'm so sorry. So, Yuchi, shout out to you. Leila, let's get to some questions. This one from John wants to know, who has to play better this time around against the Eagles? Any immediate names that come to mind?
Yeah, there's one immediate name that definitely comes to mind. It's Terrence Steele.
Yes,
Terrence Steele Terrence Steele definitely needs to play better football this week against the Eagles. And I think, overall, he has been playing better football since the Philadelphia game. I think as we start to get further and further away from the injury, you're starting to see him kind of play into shape. I thought the Washington game specifically was maybe one of his best games. But I think that this is a twofold thing. One, look, I don't love the matchup between him and whoever the pass rushers are on the Eagles side over there, because the Eagles pass rush is incredible. I mean, whether it's Brandon Graham or whoever they put, or Hassan Reddick that they put over there. That's the one I'm
worried about is Reddick.
Yeah. I think that there's probably a mismatch going on there, but that's to be expected. I mean, that's the case with Hassan Reddick or Brandon Graham against most right tackles in the league. The area where I feel like we need him to be, I mean, first of all, his pass blocking has to be better than what it was in that game. Yeah. Like, that's bottom line one, right? Like, the pass blocking is the biggest issue. But beyond that too, I also need him to be a better run blocker, because I do think that part of the way that you can attack this Eagles defense successfully, consistently, is finding a way to attack these lighter edges, right? Hassan Reddick in the run game, Brandon Graham in the run game. So you want to see him bullying these guys on those snaps so that when it comes to the pass rush snaps, he's tenderized them a little bit, and he's got some physicality on there. But overall, I think, if you're pointing at one guy in one specific aspect that definitely has to improve in this game, it's got to be Terrence Steele and his pass protection. The Cowboys ended up giving up 5 sacks. I think he probably gave up 3 of them.
Yeah,
against
12 pressures. 12 pressures.
Yeah, so that's got to improve. Absolutely.
Yeah, and if he just plays an average game, they probably win that, because remember, he gives up the sack. I was on 1st and goal from the 9 that all put the Cowboys at like 2nd and goal from the 20.
Yeah.
It's just too hard to score when you're that far out. So he needs to play better. I'll also mention the defensive tackles not named Osa Odigizua. They just didn't play well. Hankins did not have a good game. Neville Gallimore struggled. Mazi Smith did not play well. I know it's a tough matchup. I know that Jason Kelce is really good and that their interior offensive line is really good. You've got to provide some resistance inside. You've got to provide some pass rush so that Jalen Hurts just can't step up in the middle of the pocket all game long. I'm looking for those guys now that they're at home, they're on turf, that they should have a better day. If they don't, Cowboys are going to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, this is a team that that has a good interior offensive line. Obviously, Kelce is one of the best, if not the best, center in football. So the Cowboys have, and another team that really, like, I think they're going to want to run a lot more than they have been like lately, just because I think that they are at a crisis of confidence, to a certain degree. I think they've come to see exactly. Look, I'm not going to say that the 49ers exposed Philadelphia, but I think it did kind of further highlight the limitations of this offense. And when teams go through that, coordinators, I mean, I can't imagine that Philly's not going to be like this, but most coordinators, they want to get back to running the football successfully. Philadelphia, I mean, the reason they made it to the Super Bowl last year is because of the success of their run game in a lot of ways. So they still don't have a healthy Jalen Hurts, which I think is a huge aspect to why the run game was so successful last year. But I still think that they're going to try to make a commitment to going back to the run game. And the Cowboys definitely need to be ready for that. And that's going to be a lot of pressure on the defensive tackles that they need to step up.
Especially if you're going to have light boxes, because the Eagles like to spread you out and have 3 receivers on the field with a tight end that's detached. You're going to have to stop the run with 6 guys, which, again, that puts a lot of pressure on your defensive tackles to make plays in the running game. So those are 2 guys. I also mentioned, I didn't think Marquise Bell played his best game against Philly the last time around. I think this is, now that he's got a little bit more experience, I think he needs to have a big game, as does Damone Clark.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the linebackers are a huge part of playing the Philly offense. I think, that was a big difference in the 49ers game, is that they have obviously Greenlaw and Fred. So the Cowboys have, that kind of speed. I don't know if they have, necessarily that kind of physicality.
No,
but we'll find out, And I think at this point, they have what they need to kind of stop the Philadelphia short passing game. The question will be, when it's time to kind of, toughen up and stop the run. Like, how are these guys going to handle a Philadelphia that's committed to running the football down their throats?
So one of the things that we've seen over the last month, Landon, is that if you can slow down AJ Brown, you can kind of stop this Eagles passing attack and really the whole offense. Will the Cowboys consider putting Stephon Gilmore on AJ Brown in Week 14? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Skylight. Are you looking for a meaningful gift this holiday season that your loved ones will actually enjoy and use? Listen, most holiday gifts tend to be boring, especially if you're a dad. You get socks, candles, ties, but that's why you have to check out Skylight. Skylight is a touchscreen photo frame that you can send photos to straight from your phone, and they appear in seconds. It is the perfect gift for everyone on your Christmas list. I got my mom a Skylight last year to upload pictures of her grandbabies to, and she absolutely loves it. It's so easy to send your pictures through the Skylight app, and it takes less than 60 seconds to set up. You can even upload your pictures before you even open the box, so that when mom opens up the presents, she opens up the frame, she sees the pictures on there. As a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $15 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. Again, to get $15 off your purchase, go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. That is SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/locked-on. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We wanted to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Landon, let's get to our next question. This one from, very fitting, at Irish_Cowboy. He wants to know, should Stephon Gilmore travel with A.J. Brown like he did in the second half against DK Metcalf?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, because you saw the Cowboys have some success with that, once they kind of flip things around. Look, there are probably not too many wide receivers that compare to DK Metcalf or frankly to A.J. Brown. But I mean, frankly, these are the two guys that came into the league together. They went to college together. There's obviously that very famous photo now of those. Who was the third person? I can't even remember now.
I think it was DeMarcus Lodge, the other receiver.
That's right. It was. And the three of them kind of in the weight room flexing and looking that way. So, and I think that, the Cowboys clearly had some, success in getting Gilmore on that kind of defender. And I also think that that's the kind of receiver that Gilmore probably has a little bit better success with, right? He's a little more savvy. He can take a little bit more of the physical punishment. I also think that he, because there isn't a runaway speed as much aspect of it. AJ Brown's an incredibly fast receiver, and I'm certainly not taking away from his speed, but
Metcalf's quite a bit quicker.
Yeah, the difference between him and Metcalf is noticeable, and I think that's the situation. I think AJ Brown's probably a more useful, can run more routes more effectively than DK Metcalf. But as far as like a physical specimen, although AJ Brown is in his own category as well, DK Metcalf's in another world. So. I do think that is a decent plan, especially considering, getting Bland on guys like Devontae Smith, who I think he would have some success. Quez Watkins. I think that's an assignment that Bland will have more success with. Of course, the problem with that is that, it's kind of more and more about man coverage, right? And you worry sometimes when you follow a cornerback with a receiver. Obviously, you're committing to a certain amount of man coverage. If you do that, you're playing the Eagles. You have your backs to the quarterback. You got a quarterback who can hurt you with your legs. Obviously, that isn't as much of a case, it feels like, this season with Hurts still kind of dealing, with a nagging knee injury, just not seemingly being the same runner as he was last year. But it's just something to consider. But I do think kind of the overall question, I think it is a smart play. I do think that they will mix it up. I don't think that they're going to have him follow him the whole game, but I think getting Gilmore on AJ Brown is as about a favorable matchup as you're going to get against AJ Brown for the Cowboys.
And I went back and watched the tape yesterday of Gilmore against Brown, and it was really good. Now there was this, I don't want to say bogus. I'm going to say a bogus pass interference call in the third quarter where, I mean,
it was bogus.
There was nothing. Even Greg Olsen was just shocked that they called this. It does feel like Gilmore he's a veteran. He knows how to do certain things at the line of scrimmage to disrupt his route. He knows how to put his hands on certain receivers so the refs won't call it mostly. I think this is one where the Cowboys at least need to explore it. But you're right. They can't go play exclusively man-to-man against the Eagles because it's just too easy to figure out ways to get guys open, whether it's rub routes or whatever, plus the threat of Jalen Hurts. But if the Cowboys can control who's on AJ Brown and who's on Devontae Smith, I would prefer Gilmore on Brown as much as possible.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And, after watching the San Francisco game, I mean, AJ Brown was compromised, and I think that you saw what that did to the Eagles offense without AJ Brown being able to win consistently with explosiveness. Not, he wasn't unable to play, but it was enough that it affected his game that he wasn't able to kind of get open at the same rate that
especially
he
the second
normally was.
Half, you could see it.
Yeah, you could really
100%.
tell the difference. Yeah, and I think that is why you saw a lot of Jalen Hurts in the pocket against a must rush that wasn't necessarily interested in completely pursuing him. And he just looked panicked. Like, he just looked like he had nowhere to go with the ball. He's not exceptionally great at, operating inside of a pocket and getting through multiple reads. So if you take away options early, even if he has time in the pocket, there's a certain amount of panic that ensues. And look, it's still Jalen Hurts. He still can get outside the pocket and create, and there's still the chance for the latent snap, second chance opportunities. That's always going to be a part of Jalen Hurts' game. But I think if you're able to take away early passing reads, make him have to get through a progression, and then just taking away his good escape routes, specifically stopping him from rolling to his right, I think you're in a spot that you can get him, make him look pretty human. And definitely take advantage of those situations.
Well, and there was a question from one of our listeners. I'm sorry, I don't have it on hand, but they wanted to know, should the Cowboys kind of like abandon some of the stunts? Because the 49ers did not stunt at all last week against the Eagles. They basically played them straight up, and it kind of allowed them to keep Hurts in the pocket. Do you think that's something that Dallas should consider this week?
Yes, I do. Because I think that even watching the game at the time, it felt like, and I feel like this was problematic against San Francisco as well, but in different reasons. I felt like it's a double-edged sword sometimes with the stunts and the twists, right? Because sometimes it creates the little pathway that you need to free up a DeMarcus Lawrence or a Parsons come screaming through the middle of the defensive line and attacking the quarterback right in his face. Sometimes it puts a player out of position in the hole where the play is going, or it opens up a hole in the middle of the defense that I just discussed a second ago. And instead of Parsons running through, Jalen Hurts runs out of the front of the pocket and he picks up 8 yards untouched. So the Cowboys definitely need to make sure that they are cognizant of where Hurts is. I think it's really important to, and I don't have the numbers here, but I don't, going back and watching that San Francisco game, I don't feel like they got a ton of sacks necessarily on Jalen Hurts, but that's not necessarily what you should be trying to do. No. Like, I think the pursuit of sacks is where you can kind of get in trouble here, because you give up bad angles. If you just corral him, he will probably make the mistake. He'll throw an incompletion. He'll put himself in a position to really taking advantage of a real mistake. You saw that one time where he was trying to peel out and he just kind of slipped on his own feet and he lost 15 yards. It's like that kind of stuff where if you put it in the panic where he has to create, but you don't give him good options, then he will make a mistake. He will fall down. He'll throw a bad pass. He'll throw it away. That's your best bet in trying to kind of slowing down that passing attack.
I agree. I'm going to be really curious to see how Dan Quinn manages to be aggressive but not be too aggressive, right? Because we've seen this, especially against the 49ers in the past. The stunts end up hurting them more than it helps. I'm fascinated to see the game plan the second time around against the Eagles now at home. Let's talk about a draft redo for the Cowboys in 2023 next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, all you have to do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the most fun I've had playing DFS because there's so many different players and stat projections to choose from. Plus, PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits in the first half and does not return for the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. We also want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 if your team wins. You could take the Cowboys this week -3.5, or just take them on the money line on FanDuel. Pretty nice little bet there. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options available, including spreads, player props, over-unders, futures bets. You can go bet on the MVP award, 2 of the quarterbacks that are playing on Sunday night, top 3 in MVP odds right now. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every day on tomorrow's show, we've got a crossover show with Gino Camilleri from Locked On Eagles. Always a lot of fun talking to our guy, Gino, who projected the Giants to finish second in the NFC East this year. Every time I see him, I got to bring that up. So good deal. But make sure you guys check out that. We're previewing this Cowboy-Eagle game on Sunday Night Football. Landon, our final question here, and this is a really good one from our guy, Robbie. He wants to know, if you could redo the 2023 draft at pick 26, are you taking Mazi Smith, Sam LaPorta, who the Cowboys really liked and debated on taking at 26, or Matthew Bergeron, the guy that it came down to against Mazi Smith?
I'm probably not taking Bergeron. Just simply, I think Bergeron's been good, and I think he's been better than I expected at guard, which was surprising. But I just think that that worked out for the Cowboys, right? You got Tyron Smith where you wanted him, and Tyler Smith is better than Bergeron would ever be.
Well,
right?
And what would, again, I'm not opposed to Bergeron because I do think he's going to be a really good guard in the NFL. Where does he play for you? I mean, it would almost assume that you have to move Tyler Smith to left tackle, right? Or you move on from Zach Martin after this year or 2 years. I don't want to.
So we're not taking Bergeron.
Well, and they just gave Martin a new deal, so that's not happening.
Yeah. So I mean, I think I think that to me it's between LaPorta and Mazi Smith. Look, it's easy to to peek into windows here and have it at, like right now, Sam LaPorta is having an incredible rookie season for tight end, and kudos to the Cowboys for identifying that. But I just think that it's hard for me to just give up on a defensive tackle after 1 year, and for me, like, the Cowboys still have strong needs there more than they do at tight end, especially now that Ferguson is better than way better than you expected. And so I tend to think that it's easy for us to sit here and say, oh, hindsight's 2020. Let's go back and take this. I still feel like we need to give Mazi a little bit more time to kind of develop at a position that's incredibly difficult to develop at. Now, speaking out of both sides of my mouth, I understand that Sam LaPorta plays tight end, which is another very difficult position to kind of develop in, and he's been very good. But I just think it's probably a push at this point, because I do really want to see Mazi kind of develop. I do have confidence that he will eventually come into something that's good and special for the Cowboys. But it's obviously admittedly taking a lot longer than it did for Sam LaPorta.
Sure. I mean, let's be clear. Sam LaPorta is a better player between Mazi and him right now. There's just no doubt. But how much better has LaPorta been than Jake Ferguson? I think slightly better, but not significantly better. And with the way Sam LaPorta is, he's a 245-pound tight end who plays out of the slot, who doesn't really block a ton, which basically means that Jake Ferguson goes to being your number 2 tight end. And that's fine. If we're doing like full hindsight is 2020 here, the answer is probably none of these guys. And you take like Tank Dell and you just add more speed to your offense. And if it's CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks and Tank Dell at receiver, I think we're feeling even better about this offense. But if those are the options, I'm cool with still rolling with Mazi Smith, expecting a big leap in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I think now is not the time to kind of fully weigh in on this person's career yet.
No, and I want to mention, like, I mean, I know PFF grades are not everything, but go look at stats or PFF grades on Dexter Lawrence after year 1.
Yeah.
Derek Brown after year 3. Like I remember people after year 3 of Derek Brown were like, "Oh man, this is a waste of a pick."
Absolutely.
And now you watched him against the Cowboys a couple weeks ago, just throwing Zach Martin into the air. These guys typically, it does take at least a year, sometimes 2 years before they reach their ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, they come into college football, they're so dominant just based on their physical ability.
Yes.
And they don't get the opportunity. The rarest thing to see in college football is a very developed offensive lineman. and so they don't, these guys just don't get to see guys who are veterans of their craft that are savvy to them, that are also strong and quick. And on top of that, the sheer volume of blocking schemes, whether it's in the run game or pass, that they have to face versus what they had to face in college is just it's night and day. So their heads are swimming. They're not playing at their full speed, which also, is not playing at full strength. And they also, for someone like Mazi, he's having to learn whole new techniques as far as getting off the ball and that sort of thing. So, these guys are balls of clay when they come into the NFL at different levels of development.
Yes.
Mazi had a ways to go. The Cowboys knew that when they hired him, when they drafted him, and now they know that it's going to take them a little bit longer to kind of get them to where his ceiling is. But I still think his ceiling is very high, and I still think he's going to get there.
I mean, there's just very few Jalen Carters that come right into the NFL and produce at a high level right away. I mean, and look no further than the guy that's playing right next to him, and Jordan Davis, who hardly played at all last year because Philly didn't think he was ready. And even now, like, you're starting to see better play from him, but it's still taking a while. And that was somebody who was drafted at 13 rather than 26.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think he's on track still. It's not where we want it to be yet, but I think he's going to get there. And when he does, I think the exciting thing is that we've seen he can do more than just stop the run. I think, you've seen him as a pass rusher have some success. I imagine he could be a nice little two-way player, once he develops into it.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Again, every day. On tomorrow's show, we've got our crossover episode with Locked On Eagles. You want to make sure that you check that out. We debated Jalen Hurts versus Marcus Mariota. Seriously, we really did. So make sure.
As quarterback?
Yeah, as a quarterback. Apparently, that's the new thing out there. There's some people in the national media that think Marcus Mariota should start over Jalen Hurts. Wild.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, me too. As somebody who's rooting for the Cowboys. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, exactly.
Go check out the Locked On Cowboys podcast on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We will see you right back here tomorrow.